unlikely things I've learned through bush life. As you all know, I spent a lot of time in the outdoors camping in remote areas, up to 3 months of the year and sometimes more. And of course, I live in an area some people would consider remote. We have electricity, but other than that, off-grid and surrounded by public land, and not a lot of people. When I'm working from home on a day-to-day basis, I don't see very many other people, vehicles, or anything like that. So it's definitely a little more off the beaten path than where the majority of people live. And one of the unlikely things I've learned from spending time alone, I've done a lot of big solo trips, some lasting over a month, or just, long trips with other people like my brother Ted or my family. And it's actually, what I've actually learned is the ability to read people, which I kind of thought was interesting, because you think that not being around people would mean you couldn't read people. And this might just be like a unique thing that is just, happened to me because of my path in life. But I actually used to work in New York City, and I'd be down in Manhattan, I'd be driving in Manhattan traffic, and it was like a sales related job, and I would be there for 2, sometimes 3 weeks even at a time. But that gave me the opportunity to then do some of my bigger trips. And so when me and my brother paddled the Kujua back in 2008, I was working in New York City at the time, but then I could take off 3 weeks to go paddle this river in the Arctic. And so that kind of worked, but it was crazy. I'd be from like New York to Nunavut, and I saw a ton of people, and I was interacting with a ton of people, but whatever I was learning about reading people there maybe wasn't registering as much, because you're just so bombarded when you're in a city. You're so bombarded with people that your mind doesn't really pick individual things out because there's too much clutter. When you're in the bush, you actually become connected with a sixth sense more. And I'm sure a lot of people in urban settings do too. Like some people are very street smart and stuff like that. But this is just kind of my own personal experience, and I'm interested to hearing if anybody else has anything they can add to that or can relate to this in any way. But I used to go when I'd spend long times in the outdoors, and I used to sense that I was about to see an animal, whether driving along bush road, and you're sort of starting to get into a bit of a meditative state as you drive, and then I think I'm about to see an animal, and then I would, or I'd be paddling down a river, and I'd get that kind of feeling, almost like hair standing on the back of your neck, sort of like someone's looking at you, and I'd think I'm about to see an animal, and then I would. And this happened to me a number of times, so I said, okay, I'm just going to start saying it when other people are around to really just test myself. Is this just a coincidence? So I started doing that, and it really did happen. I remember one time with Tori, when we paddled the lower Magnetawan River, long before we ever bought our home here on the Mag. We got in the canoe after a little carryover rapid, and I had that really strong feeling. And I said, okay, Tori, we're about to see something. We're about to see an animal. And sure enough, I think about 4 deer, about a minute or two later, looked at us and started bounding along the side of the river with us, beside us paddling, which was amazing. And I brought this up to a friend of mine that I used to work in mineral exploration with. That's a job that I had after this sales job in New York City. Then I started working in the bush, and that was again, 3 weeks on and then 3 weeks off, or sometimes more time off, and I would make a bunch of money doing mineral exploration. I couldn't spend it while I was off on these stints, and then I would go ahead and use that money to pay for my trips and do some of my first produced pieces and stuff like that. At the time I was contributing these short videos to magazines, and yeah, so I'd be in the bush and then back into the bush. And I remember telling a buddy of mine about that, about how do you feel, I asked him, do you feel like, you know, this is a guy who spent a lot of time in the outdoors, do you ever feel like you can sense like you're seeing an animal? And he said, yeah, it happens to me too. I'm like, okay, well, let's try it. And sure enough, we were driving along, he's like, okay, we're going to see something, boom, we see a moose, boom, we see another moose. So I know this isn't I'm not the only person that this kind of happens to. So I'm wondering if learning that in the bush, being around a lot of people in a setting like New York City, and then coming back and just like experiencing bush life, where I live now, and what I do being in the outdoors as a filmmaker and content creator and all that, if that sort of has made an interesting storm, I guess, to be able to read other people. I don't know if anybody who's lived in the bush has experienced the same thing, but to me it has a lot to do with just that kind of mental clutter of seeing all kinds of people around. And now that I've lived here for, I guess, pushing 7 years, you know, I got a membership at the gym in a small town that's on the way to where my son's daycare is. It's an hour, a 34-minute drive in the sun, in good weather, to get my son to daycare. So I thought, well, I better start exercising more, get in good shape in between my expeditions. And great idea. I feel like 10 years younger. It's awesome. But I was in there, and there's a guy that owns a gym, and there's this kind of older dude in there as well, friendly and everything. For the first 4 or 5 times I went there, those are the only people that were there. And about the third time, someone just told me this older guy was a cop, or at least had been a cop. And so I brought it up, and they were just like, it was true. And they're just like, how did you know he was a cop? And, you know, very nice guy and all that. And I'm like, I don't know. I just knew that this guy was a cop. And they're looking at me like, holy crap, what are you, a genius? The next time I was there, I was doing some weights, and there's like the mirrors in front of me, and I saw out of the corner of my eye, there's another younger kid working out in the back corner, and the cop, who's actually an ex-cop, was sort of sitting down beside me doing some weights. And I said, is that your son over there? And he looked at me like, yeah, like, how the hell did you know that? And there's been another few things when I enter sort of like these normal kind of social or public environments that are now not a part of my life, where I can just like lock into something in a pretty awesome kind of way, and just something just tells me, like, I have kind of a sixth sense about people and what they do, or if they're up to no good, or, you know, this kind of thing. And there's been a couple other situations like that recently that I've been completely right about, and even brought it up to people, and they're like, no way, that person's not involved in this or that guy, and I turned out to be right. So yeah, that is in my mind, an unlikely thing that I've learned from life in the bush, is being able to read people when I come back into, you know, a suburban or an urban setting. And I think largely it has to do with me just being way more dialed in. Even, okay, here's another example. Even when I'm working, let's say I'm working out back or in front of my house, and I'm chopping wood, or I'm doing one of the many outdoor tasks that we have around here. If someone's looking at me, I'll be doing something, I'm just immediately look around and I see someone looking at me. Just somebody, you know, walking along the street here, or my neighbor or whatever. I can tell immediately and turn around and see that someone's looking at me. That's not something that you get really when you're in the city. Now, all humans, though, have that kind of a sixth sense, right? Like humans can tell if someone is looking at them when they're sleeping, right? So I don't think there's really an explanation for all this. Or what about the other one is when you hold your finger right here, when someone holds their finger right here between your eyebrows, you can feel it even though they're not touching you. And there's a whole ton of things like that, right? Like, you know, if we hold, you know, a washer on the end of a string, and we just hold it there, and we don't move our hand, but we imagine in our mind that the washer is going to swing in circles. It starts swinging in circles. If we imagine in our mind that the washer is going to start swinging back and forth, it swings back and forth, even though we're not moving our hand. So I don't know whether that's really related, but I think there's something there, and there's something in nature that gets us, you know, also. And then put it this way, we know when we're in nature, our other senses are heightened, right? So here's another example. Yeah, when we're in the city, those senses kind of dumb down. I remember I was paddling this river. It was actually the Stikine years ago, the upper Stikine. And as I was coming down the river, we had seen no development, no signs of humans for many days. And as I was coming down the river, I smelt a bridge. And there's an old bridge, an old rail bridge that crosses the river that was like never even used. And I guess some of the tar or whatever it's called again that they put on the railway ties, I could smell that like way before the bridge was even visible. Like how many people can say I've smelt a bridge before, right? So if those senses are going to be heightened when you're in the bush, probably these other senses have been heightened. And I can only imagine where that might lead to, right? Like, so if you go back and you look at some indigenous people, more, even of course still in this day and age, but more so, they could look at a plant. I've heard stories of them being able to look at a plant, to hold a plant, talk to a plant even, and be able to almost communicate with it to get a feeling for what its purposes or its medicinal uses might be. And I'm not sure how much technical evidence there is to prove that, but I think that there's something there. And I've even had similar experiences like that with plants before, from being in the bush, that are like very interesting, and I know, some of this stuff kind of gets written off as a little woo-woo, right? And probably because it is, and a lot of people kind of fake this, or they claim they have some special sort of senses or powers and use it to get people's money and all this kind of stuff. So that's not what I'm about at all. But yeah, I don't know. Let me know. What do you think? Is there anything there? Do you find that to be interesting? Can you find that to be relatable? The ability to read people better after being away from people and in nature for longer? Let me know. Tori, me and the kids are all not feeling well. We were supposed to head off on a winter camping trip to explore a little known lake that's probably about the closest thing to a fly-in you're going to find around here, where I think the fishing's going to be great. We're going to do some ice fishing, winter camping, you name it. But the whole family's come down with something, and Tori was particularly not feeling well. She just did the Hamilton Adventure Show, so maybe just prep for that, not sleeping much, and the chaos involved with it hit her harder. She got a worse strain, whatever. I think it's just a flu bug. And so that basically postponed my trip. My truck also broke down, which also postpones your trip. The four-wheel drive wouldn't engage. So I don't know. We'll see how Tori's feeling, but it might be just me and Huddy heading out. Wesley's and Tori are the sickest, so me and Huddy are kind of like pretty much better. So me and Huddy might head out on a trip, just the two of us, and then we're all going to head up by snowmobile to our cabin late February, early March. And then I have an amazing northern trip to do with a very interesting adventurer. And we're going to go up to the shores of Hudson Bay and look for the remains of an old Hudson Bay Company trading post, and we're going to access Moosonee via the Polar Bear Express, and it should be pretty cool. So more to come. And then this summer I have some crazy stuff going on. Me and my brother are rafting the Grand Canyon. I get back, and then I'm canoeing, soloing a whitewater river in the Yukon-Mackenzie Divide, and then me, Tori, and the kids are going to spend about 6 weeks at our cabin exploring the area. Then I'm going to do another trip up to Hudson Bay, and then I'm going moose hunting for about a week as well in October. So lots of cool stuff coming up. So check it all out. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd really appreciate it. Smash that subscribe button. They say, when you want something, you should just ask. That's what I'm doing right now. Please subscribe to my channel and share some of my posts with some of your friends. Let people know about my channel. Every little bit helps, and yeah, it all goes a long way. Fluctuations in YouTube, right? So the way I pay myself as a guy who's a full-time YouTuber now is I get paid by the ad revenue. So I get a percentage of the ad revenue. So YouTube will place ads on my content, and when you watch the ads, especially if you click on them or even buy buy something, I get a little bit of money from that, and they get a little bit of money from that. So yeah, the more people that watch, essentially, the better. And in January and February, it's like, whoa, it's a tough time, and it's like always a panic time, because all the advertisers have advertised everything building up to Christmas, and nobody wants to, nobody's really buying, and everybody's broke in January, right? So yeah, it's definitely a downswing. But my last video, I got good response from that, and I'm looking at putting out some more good winter content. I have an awesome thing coming up. I think I'm going to call it 9 Winters, and it's basically a story that ties together some of my best winter adventures. The furthest one going back to, I think, 2010, 2011, and then moving forward 2017, and then all the family stuff, some of the bushcraft survival winter stuff you've seen me do, you know, and also family camping, and my big solo adventures across Baffin Island, or hauling freight toboggans on ancient indigenous travel routes in northern Ontario, and all those trips. So I'm going to call it Perpetual Winter, or 9 Winters, I don't know, but that should be coming up soon. So check it out, and thank you everybody for your support. It means a lot. Take care.